Well, it's 6:01, so I think we are ready to start if everybody will have a seat. And we have a minister here tonight to carry us or lead us in invocation, I hope. I think we have one on the schedule. Is he here? There you go. Everybody stand, please.
Shall we pray? Heavenly Father, we bless you because you are the Lord over our city. We pray for your grace over our city leaders. We recognize that your grace is sufficient to keep them. We pray for each and every one, that even though they may not know what to do in tough times, their eyes will be fixed on you. Lord, grant them wisdom and help them to remember that it is you who gives wisdom, because from your mouth comes knowledge and understanding. We thank you, Lord, for granting wisdom this evening and every day to our city leaders and those involved. In Jesus' name, amen.
And thank you, sir. Ms. Hebert, if you'll lead us in the pledge.
Everyone turn and take the flag. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, our first item will be approval of the agenda.
Motion to approve.
We have a second?
Second.
All right.
Mayor Pro Tem.
I'm sorry.
I'd like to pull my item off under my name on the second page.
Okay. So we'll be moving the agenda with that change. And we have
That's
a
fine.
motion and a second. Are we able to get the motion in the second recorded? Okay, in that case, we will call the vote. I'm sorry?
I'd like to walk one item on too, if I could, please.
Okay.
Just a brief discussion regarding the filling of the empty council seat that we now have
And you're going to put that under your,
under the city manager.
all right,
Yeah.
sounds good. In that case, let's vote. Now, my question is, do I go get my, I guess I get my little voting from over here, huh?
Your tiebreaker.
That's not going to work correctly for tonight.
You can do it, maybe, but that's okay. All right. Well, in that case, it looks like it is 6 yeses. Okay, we have 2 proclamations tonight. First one would be proclamation of food for thought. I will come down to the dais and read it.
Do we need to approve the minutes from the March 15th meeting first, or do we just do that?
Which one?
We need to approve the minutes from the March 15th meeting.
Ah, skipped
I'll
over.
second
Sorry
it.
about that.
Motion to approve those minutes.
And I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Then we'll call the vote.
We got to do roll call?
Kevin, yes.
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 Yes? We're doing a roll call.
Sorry, I'm waiting on other voices which aren't here. Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so that passes unanimously. Now we can go to the proclamations. Okay. Our first one on the agenda is food for thought. Whereas no child in Destin should experience the negative impact of hunger, and whereas Destin recognizes the impact food insecurity places on local children, families, and communities, and whereas Food for Thought outreach serves to empower a child to get the most out of their education and development by providing them weekly access to healthy, easy-to-prepare meals, and whereas Food for Thought works tirelessly to align all aspects of their organization with the opportunities to ensure each food provided includes healthy grains, fruits, vegetables, and proteins so child recipients and their families can easily prepare the healthiest meal possible. And whereas Food for Thought has taken root with support from the entire community, including a dedicated partnership with the City of Destin, whereas Food for Thought will celebrate the 5th anniversary of the opening of their first Destin Pantry location with the help of City of Destin, the Destin Chamber of Commerce, the Rotary Club of Destin, and many additional dedicated partners. Now, therefore, Mayor Gary Jarvis, on behalf of the Destin City Council, do hereby recognize May 18th, 2021 as Food for Thought Day and call this observance to the attention of all citizens of Destin. Thank you very much. And I take it this is some of our food. Yes, it is. Is it on? It's on. All right. And would either of you ladies like to make any comment other than what a wonderful job you're doing?
I wasn't planning on it, but I can say something quickly. Sure. I would just like to express our thanks for the partnership that we've had for the past 5 years with our facility on Airport Road. You know, we serve over 3,500 students a week, and more than 70% of those come from that facility. We see over 150 volunteers a week in that facility. We have a garden at that facility, and without your support, we definitely wouldn't be able to take root and guarantee our services. So thank you so much.
Very good. And anything? You'll pass? As a former school board member, I can tell you hungry children don't learn. It's vitally important to the education of every child, and we can't thank you enough.
Mayor Pro Tem, can I say something?
Yes.
As a volunteer, about every other month on a Wednesday with a group of people, it's awfully nice to see how many things that are put into these bags for the kids. And if I can do a shout out to Destin and a lot of the groups, the small groups, the church groups that put together their own little, this is our 2-hour window. They start Wednesday morning and they're done by 5 in the afternoon, and you only have to do an hour and a half or 2 hours. And the 2 hours goes by really quick because you're sort of like on an assembly line loading the bag. So if you have time on Wednesdays, please call them and volunteer your time, because many hands make light work. So thank y'all for what you're doing, and I've enjoyed being a part of it.
Very good. Anyone else have a comment? And here is the proclamation.
I think we're going to take a little picture.
I think we are.
We can food in there too. Actually, you know what, if we can have food in front of you all, and then we'll get that really
There we go.
quick. Sorry.
Well, should we get behind the food? And our second proclamation is Drinking Water Week. Whereas water is our most valuable natural resource, and whereas only tap water delivers public health protection, fire protection, support to our economy, and to the quality of life we enjoy, and whereas any measure of a successful society, low mortality rates, economic growth, diversity, productivity, and public safety are in some way related to the access of safe water, and whereas Destin Water Users is the water service provider for our area, and whereas we are all stewards of the water infrastructure upon which future generations depend, and whereas each citizen in our community is called upon to help protect our source waters from pollution, to practice water conservation, and to get involved in local water issues by getting to know their water, now therefore be it resolved that by the virtue of the authority vested in Mayor of Destin, I do hereby proclaim May 2 through 8, 2021 as Drinking Water Week. And this is done by Mayor Gary Jarvis. And I see we have a representative here today. Lockwood,
Thank you.
anything to say?
Well, I'd just like to thank the city for their partnership, and because of that, we're able to guarantee that water is there when they need it. Thank you.
Absolutely, and they have done that now for how many years, Lockwood?
It would be 63, so
We're getting very close to 50, I would think.
we're past 50. We're at 53.
There you go. Very good. And of course, I remember when all we had were wells and septic tanks, and it's a big improvement, believe me.
Appreciate it, yep.
Okay, we're at the part of the agenda that allows comments by the public. So public comments on agenda items that are not in public hearings and any other matters not on the agenda is now open. Do we have anybody from the public that's here to speak on an item tonight? You ready? Come forward, please.
John Stevens, 4025 Indian Trail. Just got a couple things real quick. So been thinking about safety a lot lately, and one of the things that we were kind of thinking was, I don't know if it's possible of the city of Destin to possibly adopt a program to offer boater safety courses for the high school students at Destin High School. And something, if this program eventually works real well, to maybe try to push for it, to maybe get adopted in the county. I figure this would probably be a good starting place at least. And I don't know if it's something where we offer to help pay for these tests for these kids or certain classes, or just an idea on that one. Any questions on that one?
No, thank you. I will be in touch with the principal. Sorry, I'm not sick. I've been screaming in a cheer competition all weekend, so don't panic. But I will speak with the principal and make sure. We do have a captain/fishing program that we're going to do. So this might be a very good complement to it, or an element or a course, an elective per se, that anyone could take at the school. So
Okay.
I'll be sure and I've got your email, so
Perfect.
I can pass that on to her, and someone will be in touch with you, and we can see how we can move forward.
Okay. Yeah, I know like Alabama, like a lot of times they offer it in conjunction with the driver's course, and that way they can get it on their driver's license right away too. So.
That's terrific. I do have, actually, you know what just occurred to me is the Coast Guard used to offer a boating safety course, because I took it years ago. Are they still doing that?
The Coast Guard Auxiliary offers it, the Power Squadron offers it, and then of course there's a whole bunch of online lifetime boater safety classes too.
Right, maybe it's something we could work with them as well and sort of have public-private joint partnerships of some sort. So, excellent, thank you.
Okay. And then, oh, go ahead.
Would just suggest that you make it available to the school district. I think Marty Gardner is our representative, and if you gave her a call, she can facilitate finding who it is you should talk to. It's a good idea.
Okay, sounds good. I'll follow up with that. And then the other thing about safety, had a meeting with Lieutenant Corbett, who's the Marine Patrol officer, not too long ago. And he said the number one issue that we're having with vessels on the water is no wake zones. So I was wondering if, has anyone heard if there's any updates on fixing the missing and additional signage that they're supposed to be adding for the no wake zones? Last I heard, it was approved by FWC, but they were just waiting on the county to install them.
City Manager, do we have any information on that?
Can I get back to you on that one? I'd be happy to
Okay.
get with you.
Okay.
Sounds good.
And then the last conversation I had with him was just, I was curious how many BUIs were given. So as of maybe a week or two ago, he said that they gave out a total of 7 BUIs. Surprisingly, 2 were private vessels, 2 were from the military base, and 3 were from liveries. And of course, that doesn't include Billy Bullock's weekend, which was this weekend. So, and last I heard for Billy Bullock's, there was a total of 10 BUIs, and almost all of them were from bow legs. And last I chatted with a lot of the vendors, most of the Destin ones were trying to stay away from renting to people for boat legs. So, but that's all I got. I appreciate it.
All right, do we have anybody else? Yes, sir.
810 Indian Trail. I'm just trying to figure out what's taking so long with the livery license vessels, licenses. And one main thing I'd like to know is I've been on one of my businesses for 28 years. I was the first person on the property before anybody else got there. I am the hardest one now to get my license. So why shouldn't have everybody else that came after me should be going through this stuff that I'm going through? Nobody else is going through it. Now, last week, we got some stuff back from the city. I turned my license in about 5 months ago. Still did not get it back yet. They gave me a list of stuff to fill out. And I'm not trying to throw nobody underneath the table at the city. Trust me, I'm not trying to throw nobody underneath the table. They're friends of mine, I know them all, and I try to work with them on a daily basis. But it ain't none of my business who has their BTRs down there and who does not have them. I got mine. That's what I'm worried about. Now, if somebody else ain't got theirs, they shouldn't be writing me and asking me why. And another thing is, that's just there. One other thing is, at Discount, we're the only person on the property. We have 60 plus, 65 plus car spots. When we turned in our stuff, our engineer said we were allowed 71 on the paper. We only needed 57 with the multimodal stuff. I have 65. I have yet to get my license at Discount. That's the second thing. And the other thing is, I know for a fact, the only people they have been coming after is the people that's been in here doing it right, got the license. They got 50 rogue operators sitting out there in the harbor running every day. Now, they're on pontoon boats. They're not hard to find. Some of them's got Texas licenses on their boats and everything else. The boat still goes out every day and picks up passengers. My question is, why is the delivery vessel people the only one that's going through this and not the other people?
So real quick, you're saying that you're the only one that you're parking for 30-something years, but the other kiosks are coming in like 5 years ago, and then they're being approved and given a permit?
Yeah, they get approved and get permits, and I'm there since 1991, originally on the first piece of property. And all this stuff is built up after I've been there. So I've been there with my license, and I think since then, we had somewhere around 130-something units that we paid for that we don't even have. That's just the license we bought. So therefore, they should be able to say this, hey, you got yours and you got all these other people coming in. Well, maybe they shouldn't have got theirs. But I was there first, and I've been there for all them years. So I just think it's wrong,
Joey, can you tell us why he hadn't had his application in for 5 months and hadn't gotten it back yet?
I do know that was some corrections that needed to be added. There was some other paperwork that wasn't submitted correctly, but I can get with my code officer that handles that and planning, and we can get down to the root of it.
Well, I could add that some of the requests from staff had to do with clarifications on changes that happened over the years. So we implemented new processes at the city for change of use applications, which didn't exist before. So with respect to the many kiosks on the property, for example, those were not previously required to go through that process. So staff is really doing what they said they were going to do back, was it a month ago now, or more than a month ago, back in February, when we talked about how this year was going to be the cleanup year. That's all that we're doing, trying to get everything straight in our records. So with regard to the BTRs, that was just evidence of some changes in the businesses, because what was initially submitted didn't match the city's records for the BTR. So we were just saying, give us the information, tell us what's changed so we can update our records and properly confirm that you have the parking that matches the uses. So at this point, you and everybody else in a similar situation, you're not the only one in the situation, but everybody was given, that is in the situation of having a complete application, but not yet determined that it is sufficient as far as all code provisions. Everybody in that situation was given a temporary authorization to continue operating through the end of May, just to protect your business interests and to work together with delivery vessel owners so that nobody was affected by the city not getting it done yet. So you should have received an acknowledgement that says your application is complete, you have submitted what we asked for, we are reviewing it now for compliance with code. We do send out some of the more complicated parking matters to a consultant who has a 2-week window on his end too. And it's going through the process. So that's why basically it is in limbo right now, but nobody's stopping you from operating, and everybody's working with you and your attorney, who I don't think he's here, so we're not going to get too into the details.
I understand exactly what you're saying, but my question is this. If y'all find out for any whatsoever reason that they don't have, let's say a spaceship comes down and crashes in the lot, nobody's fault. So they said, well, you don't have enough parking down there at there. Or whose license is y'all going to affect? Are y'all going to affect the guys on the dock that came in after me? Or are y'all going to take my license away that's been there 29 years? So when we get down to the actual nut cutting at the very end and something happens, they say, well, you just don't have enough parking. Who's getting the license revoked?
All I'll say, because again, you have an attorney that's not here tonight, but what I'll say is the property owner is responsible for the property's parking.
I understand that.
And
but y'all
that's
gave
the
out
answer.
other BTRs after I've been there. Y'all gave out plenty of them. And I'm not looking at it affecting anybody else's BTR, trust me. You know, I want everybody to get their stuff. But it comes a time and a place where you got to cut and keep going, and it's time, 5 months. And just like discount, very simple deal. Here it is, it's laid out. I've done everything you asked, I got all my stuff, give me my license and let me go. Because next year, when this is it's supposed to be a nice, easy transition. Well, what happens if you have a bunch of more vendors that just changed around the property? Or we go, well, this vendor didn't get his, this vendor didn't get his, or this is a new vendor. Am I going to go through it again next year? Thank you.
Thank
Hey,
you.
Charles, the problem that I've seen, I've been sitting in this seat for a year and a half telling all these guys, staff, yourself, that all this shit's coming to a head. That there's not going to be any more storytelling. There's not going to be able to submit, this is my parking plan, and a crooked city manager is going to take it and say, okay, I'll accept it and tell his staff to issue your permit. Just for that reason, we got property down there that's got, God only knows how many BTRs on it. And they're all, and I've witnessed myself that they're using the same parking plan for multiple businesses. And they knew damn good and well that parking plan, that everybody was using that same one.
But at the beginning, let me tell you something.
And now it's all coming to a head.
I'm there 29
Mr.
years.
Duplantis,
Yeah, sorry.
please address the council.
Okay. Oh.
And I've been saying it, I've been pushing code enforcement or Joey to send out emails to, keep everybody abreast. This is coming due, it's coming due. And I said the same thing. I said, what are we going to do with all these businesses on one piece of property? Is it going to be first come, first serve? Because they're all not going to get all the parking because there's just not enough there anymore. Because we was going with a piece of paper that they're all submitting the same one, and now they're all going to get caught not having the parking that they've been saying they've had for, 10, 20 years now. Now they're getting caught in what they were saying, and I couldn't get an answer. Is it going to be first come, first serve, or who's it going to be? Is it going to be the first guy that was there, and then the second guy was on that property? They get priority. But I've been told by staff that's not our problem. That's your landlord's problem. He's the one that allowed all these businesses to get on his property, I guess, and told them they all had adequate parking. So it's not. I don't think it's his council or staff to work out a deal with anybody that they have enough parking when it's the landlord's problem. He's supposed to provide you enough parking, or anybody else enough parking. Is my opinion. It's not our responsibility to provide, not on your property or you. It's we have a lot of other businesses. It's the same way.
I understand that. Can I rebuttal to him, talk to him, or no?
Yeah.
Go ahead. Okay.
And all I can say is the staff is going to look into those issues for you. and come up with the solutions that are both equitable and legal. So I appreciate your testimony
I don't
tonight.
want to be a pain, but I just wanted, thank you.
Lance, by the next meeting, can you have your planning team tell us exactly what's still outstanding and why on these livery vessels? Please. Thank you.
Mike Abity, 530 Harbor Boulevard. I'll just expand a little bit on what Charles was saying. I'll give you my personal experience with the livery vessel application. I submitted my application in on January the 5th. It was exactly the same as it's been the last 2 years before that. So 3 years in a row. Mine was a 58-page renewal application. One of our complaints at the time and at the meeting that we had, the study work session that we had, was that these applications were too large. It was just too much paperwork. It was just too much volume. I think what happened is it caught up with staff to where they're having to go through these 58 and 78 and 88-page applications that get quite onerous. Anyway, I submitted my application on January the 5th. I got an email from David Basilak on the 12th stating that he had reviewed my application and forwarded to planning. On that was on the 12th. On January the 15th, I got an email from planning saying that they had it and it was under review. 3 weeks later, on February the 8th, I received an email stating they needed clarification on some of my parking. I responded to them immediately, same day, sent them back an email explaining that information was in my application, where it was, and how to find it, and how to explain it. On February the 11th, 3 days later, I received another email needing more clarification for parking. I wrote an email, about a half-page email. I forwarded it to planning and explained to them that where in the information that they had, that everything was explained, and I sent them copies of paperwork I had from previous staffs and previous administrations that approved everything that I had. That was February the 12th, I sent the information. 10 weeks later, April the 21st, I didn't hear anything back from them, but 10 weeks later, I received approval of that my application was approved. I was just wondering why it just took from January the 5th, that's 3.5 months, guys. Is that what this is designed? Is that how it's designed to take 3.5 months with absolutely no changes and no problems whatsoever? I understand it needed clarification. I gave them that within 24 hours. It just seems like a very complicated process, and I realize this may be the final year they're doing that, and I understand that, but it just seems very complicated. Is staff overworked, understaffed? I don't know. Maybe that's your job to hire more people to get this job done. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Just to address the last comment, yes, our staff was grossly understaffed, and we have hired some people. I think we've got some new employees now in the planning department. Am I right, Louis?
Yes, we do, and we also are losing some.
So with this economy and the way the government's taking care of the unemployed, it's really hard to keep good people. So yes, we've had a very hard shortage on some very qualified people. So they've been dealing with a lot more with a lot less help. So like I said, this is the last year you will have to do a 58-pager. Next year it should be in the system that we have spent a lot of time and money on Compass to get the information so that you will get something that you can check the box. It's all good to go, affidavit signature, submit, and you get your permit back.
Greg Fisher, 1242 Emerald Bay Drive. At the January 19th meeting, Jason Schilder from Extreme H2O came before council and explained the situation regarding backup vessels. In summary, Jason's concern is that the application does not allow for broken vessels to be swapped out, only for chase vessels. As you all may know, we are working with machines that require regular maintenance, and the ability to swap out vessels not only keeps our businesses running, but also ensures our visitors are using the safest equipment available. Due to the pandemic, there are huge shortages in spare parts, and this will likely lead to a greater rotation in our fleets. After Jason spoke, Dr. Ransmal says, maybe you can sign the application, put a statement saying that you're not agreeing to how it is written. Teresa Abert agreed. No other council members disagreed with that statement. As I said before, these operators deserve to have something in writing saying they can make swaps for backup equipment. Having a verbal agreement that says, we'll work with you, is just not good enough when your business has so much to lose if the verbal agreement gets altered with the new council or staff. So Jason and Maya could not be here today. I'm not saying I'm speaking on behalf of them, but I sort of am, because they're one of the folks that are still in the process, basically because of that backup vessel situation. Since we have another 30 days until permits are due, might I suggest council make a motion to allow the use of backup vessels if the number of permitted vessels for rent does not change, based on what the conversation was back on January 19th.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
City Manager, or Joey, whoever, wasn't there a discussion about they were going to look at that particular item a few months ago and work on it?
Yes, and my recall on that is that you already can do that. We can get Joey on the mic, but he can confirm that. But I believe, if you have to take a unit out of operation because it's broke down, you can replace it.
The process is in place. When you guys told me to execute, I executed that. They know about it, and it's going to be placed also in the eGov. It's very simple. Your vessel goes down, notify us. We come down, do an inspection. This process will also be in eGov. So then they just got to go in, put it straight into the computer. It'll send us an alert. It's done. It's that simple. It's not rocket science.
But apparently it says chase vessel in the application. Does not say anything about backup vessel or specifies that. Is that correct?
So a letter went out to the livery vessel companies on Friday afternoon and evening that specifically explained this, that repair vessels are allowed as long as it doesn't violate the moratorium and cause an increase in your overall number of vessels in the water. So, for example, when one vessel goes down, it's out of commission, you can put another vessel in the water, but then you have to take the non-operable vessel out.
Is that written in the current application?
It's written in the letter that went out on Friday afternoon because it was already in place, but there were questions, so we clarified it.
So what about adding it into the application that they sign?
Everyone's complaining about the length of the application, but we can add more.
Yeah, I'm just speaking on behalf of them because they won't sign it based on how it is written.
So here's a question. If the existing application that's already been sent out that you and others have does not have that language in it, my question then to council would be, is it satisfactory for them to go ahead and write that sentence into the application they have and sign it?
Yes, and some people have. They've been accepted.
I heard that theirs specifically was rejected. So.
Thank you.
We have anybody else? Okay, then we will move on to city manager reports. Lance?
Thank you, sir. Item 4A is regarding the annual FY22 budget calendar, and staff is asking for council's approval of this year's budget calendar along with a special date for the first public hearing, which usually coincides with the council meeting, but for reasons beyond our control, we will need to schedule a separate date for that. And we have Ms. Crystal Strickland available to answer any questions.
I'll make that motion if we want to make the motion and second it and then ask for some input.
Second.
Go ahead, Ms. Avery.
I have no further discussion. I trust that Crystal's got it squared away so we can do this and get together.
Any other discussion from the other side? All right, then we'll call the vote on this issue. Roll call, Kevin?
Yes.
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 That one passes unanimously.
Item 4B is regarding RFP 21-03-FIN for tax-exempt loan financing, and we have Ms. Crystal Strickland and some guests online to help with this item.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and council members. This evening, we have agenda item 4B regarding the request for proposals for tax-exempt loan financing. I have John Ford on the line. He's our financial advisor, and I think he recaps our experience very eloquently, so I'll call on him now. James, if you would bring him up. There he is.
Would you like to make a presentation on this issue, or are you just going to answer questions?
John, we're having trouble hearing you on our end. It shows your microphone is up. If you would maybe check what microphone settings you have on your computer, maybe.
We still can't hear you.
John, we're still having trouble hearing you. Do you want to try rejoining real quick? Okay, you're going to call in.
Well, in this case, I'll just do the short recap. We were very delighted to receive 8 very competitive proposals. We were quickly able to narrow it down to 3 choices. The top one, key government finance, far outshone the other 2, giving the greatest amount of savings. So for the 2 pieces of the debt that we're refunding, we should experience a net present value savings of $468,000 by going through with this. Mainly that's because of the interest rate. They also gave very favorable terms with no closing costs, and we can prepay at any time without any penalties, whereas some of the others had, we had to go farther out in time in order to be able to prepay without penalties. So with that, in this section, this was just a review of the request for proposals and what the bid committee is recommending that we do. And then this will be followed up shortly with a public hearing for ordinance to read the first reading of the ordinance to authorize the lending, which is, and there will also be a budget amendment related to that up in the next section under public hearings. So let's see if John's able to say a word. I know he had just a few words for you.
It looks like he's saying, just do it.
If you can hear me now, I can't hear you. So I'm having a technologically challenged evening, and I apologize to the city of Destin for that. You can hear me? That's a thumbs up?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Couple of comments on this RFP. We had an extremely good response. Getting 8 proposals from banks is a wonderful turnout, in my opinion. The interest rates that were proposed to you were equally good. The proposal from Key Government Finance with an interest rate of just under a 1.14% is an outstanding interest rate. To put that number in context, the total interest that the city of Destin will pay over the life of this debt will be less than $500,000. This is almost a $10 million loan. Several years ago, had we borrowed money at 5%, your interest in the very first year of the loan alone would have been $500,000. So we've been able to lock in some outstanding rates here. We're very, very proud of that. I'm going to apologize again because I cannot hear anything right now, and I can't really tell where Crystal left off because I was busy getting my microphone set. So with that, Crystal, I'm going to hand it back to you while I try to fix this, and then I will answer any questions that the city has.
I'll throw the motion out there if we can.
Okay, we have a motion.
I'll second it.
I move to accept the proposed Key Government Finance, Inc. in response to RFP 2103 FIN and authorize and direct city manager and mayor to execute all documentation necessary to consummate the transaction.
Yes, Ms. Ranswell.
So I just have one question, and if you wouldn't mind, is there anything in particular that accounts for the exceptionally good rate that they were able to offer us versus the other 7?
Yes, ma'am, I can hear you now. I came in halfway through your question. I believe I got the gist of it. My apologies for earlier. Interest rates right now are extraordinarily low, generally speaking. We can thank the Federal Reserve and other central banks around the world for that. There's a tremendous amount of money that is keeping interest rates very low. We are beneficiaries of that. In addition, credit has to be given to the city of Destin for responsible financial practices. You have high levels of liquidity, you have a strong financial profile, just like an individual would if they were going for a home mortgage. Your credit profile matters. Destin's profile is very, very strong. That was appealing to a number of banks, and it matters when you consider that Destin is located in the Panhandle, on the coast, in an area that is prone to hurricanes. People know that, and to overcome that perceived threat, there are companies that will not do business with communities right on the coast. Your credit profile really made up that difference. So I think that all those things taken into account, they really matter.
Excellent. Thank you so much. It's great to hear, and kudos for you and our former finance folks to get us in this position. Thank you.
Any other
Thank you for the
comments?
opportunity.
Okay, then we will call the question. Mr. Schmidt?
Yes.
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 Item 4C is related to small cellular service poles in the right-of-ways. I understand that at the last council meeting, there was a request from council that staff come back with a map to show where some of these are, and that's what we're doing here this evening, and we have Lewis available to answer any questions.
Thank you, Manager. And we all have the map. And I think one of the other questions asked by the council person last time was, what was it we could do about regulating? My understanding is not a lot. You want to give us a brief update on that, but I'm afraid that is the answer.
I think Mr. Pace said he was going to be online for questions, so.
I'm here.
Meanwhile, while we wait for that, anybody have any questions, discussion? Ms. Hebert?
I have a quick question. Is there a reason why they're putting in these short poles when we don't have 5G and we don't have anything to extend to all these poles for, 5 more years?
My understanding is they're putting in the infrastructure right now and in preparation for 5G.
Ms. Noel, was that 5G, we were told that we were too rural right now to get 5G. It was anywhere from 3 to 5 years out. Is that still true?
That is what I heard. I talked to our IT manager more specifically about the subject because I am not so techie. And he relayed to me that, yes, we do seem to be yet rural. I know there's a 5G tower or 5G over in Fort Walton. Of course, they're a little bit bigger than we are, supposedly. But that is what I know of now. If maybe Matthew's on the line and can chime in a little bit further than that, he's more than welcome to.
Yeah. Okay, I can kind of give you an idea a little bit about the 5G infrastructure that's being put in place. There are 3 levels of 5G service. There's a low band, a mid band, and a high band. And the high band is where the actual 5G speeds that you've been hearing about, how they're super fast and everything else, is going to come into play. That is about 5 years in this area, 3 to 5 years away. However, the low band, which is going to start replacing some of the 4G towers that you see that are 80 to 80, 90 feet in the air, those little towers that you're seeing, the microcell towers, are going to be utilized to take over that low band, which will be similar to kind of 4G, maybe a little bit faster as the infrastructure grows. But the way 5G works is much different than how the 3G and 4G networks that we're used to using works, where you have a large area of coverage based on a very tall tower. These are relay units that actually transmit data from pole. That's why you start to see a pattern here of where the heavily populated areas are and where they're extending these poles to. So this is just a very small amount of poles that are being put in our area. They are trying to implement the low frequency system so that they can start utilizing that here in a much quicker fashion than they would in the mid and high bands, which is called MM frequency.
I'm sorry, Dr. Ramswell, you up?
I don't know who's up, it is.
Okay. You go right ahead.
Okay, thank you. I actually have a couple, or actually 3 questions. The first one I have is, what is the potential to merge the old towers that carry the 3 and 4G conductivity with the 5G towers so that we could essentially rid ourselves of those older, taller towers?
What I'm under the impression after speaking with several different carriers and visiting several different areas that already have converted 5G and 4G, since we do have a lot of 4G users, not every device that people have will accept a 5G connection because, again, it is a totally different way of delivering wireless services. So they don't integrate with each other. However, they are utilizing some of those taller towers, and they're going to be placing some of the what they call the junction type 5G antennas on those towers as well. So they are going to be utilizing those, but just not. And in the upcoming years, as they start to transition out of a 4G and 3G network, they may make those towers smaller because they don't need to be as high like they've done in the past. And so that's what you'll see, the use of the existing towers, and as well as the towers that are on top of some of the condos and other businesses here.
Thank you. My next question is, when you look at the chart that was created, there is a very large gap in the central area of Destin, specifically the area here around City Hall, the Annex, Indian Bayou, and Henderson Beach State Park. Is there any reason why that central area of town was overlooked or omitted?
I can't actually confirm why they're placing them in the places that they are now. However, they're doing it based on population of the areas, and so whichever areas are heavily or densely populated, they will be putting in more towers in the sparser areas. But as they are, adding more towers in the downtown area, they have a very good spread, what I've been told, for the downtown area and along the bay, which are some of the newer towers you'll see. And you can actually see they've placed several at the outset. And then over the last few months, they've been placing more. So I think you'll see this grow as the infrastructure is being put in place. So those areas that may seem like they're left out right now, they won't be here in the next year or so.
Okay, great. And my argument would be that, of course, City Hall, City Annex are the key business locations from a functional governmental point of view. So it would be important to have a tower over here. And if you follow that line along the bay over there in Indian Trail, it doesn't seem that much of a stretch to have another tower jump that canal, that bayou, and just come along. But anyway, like you said, perhaps that is something in the works. My final question is that we all know that the rate of technology development is rapidly decreasing. I mean, things are coming out constantly. What's to say that in 5 years from now, it's now 6G or 7G? Any idea on technology perspective? I mean, are we going to be looking at these towers as being obsolete, or would these towers potentially be able to be utilized for a future 6, 7G?
With the advent of 5G, which is, like I keep saying, is a totally different type of wireless technology that its predecessors just are not the same. As they move forward, the chances of this type of technology changing really will not be in effect, only because you can build upon the 5G network to make it more viable in certain areas as they expand into rural areas such as ours and central to the U.S. You'll see that service, if they do go to a 6G or whatever they want to call it, 5GS or whatever, you'll actually see that the system will remain the same. Just like when we transitioned from a 3G to 4G, the system was exactly the same. We just increased the speeds. As far as 5G, if they use this, the technology that they're putting in place is going to be the technology most likely, just based on information and research I've done, for the next probably 20 to 30 years.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate your looking into all of this for us.
You're very welcome.
Thank you, I appreciate it. The map that we were provided, I know there was discussion previously that these were just AT&T. Is that accurate still?
When they were permitted through our office, we were given that they were AT&T system. Well, I shouldn't say system, but I guess AT&T is paying for these.
So all the ones on the map are the ones that AT&T is paying for? Or?
Correct.
Okay. So are we able to, when they submit a permit request, just deny it and say no?
No. No, we can't prohibit them from existing in the right-of-way, from locating or co-locating in the right-of-way. What we can do under the law is quite limited. We can do some regulation related to aesthetics and landscaping around them to try to improve the appearance as long as it doesn't interfere with the functionality of the equipment. And we can require them to register with the city, which I believe in 2019 is when we passed the ordinance, and we can get a copy from the city clerk, but we did pass an ordinance that allows us to regulate them to the extent authorized by law.
So do we have any like blanket regulations that we're putting on all permit requests for these based upon landscaping, aesthetics? Is there a list of things that we are requiring every single one when they put in to be built?
We do have some criteria like that in the ordinance. I will get you a copy. I will
Okay.
get all of council a copy.
I appreciate it. Because that's kind of my next thought or direction is, if these are AT&T and then Verizon's next and then whoever else is next, I mean, they're just going to keep multiplying. And why on Indian Trail 1 is all black, kind of looks fancy. And then why is the next one a wooden telephone pole that looks run down? Maybe that's the Verizon versus AT&T, I don't know. But, so obviously if we're doing blanketed approaches, I don't know what they are yet, so I'll reread the ordinance, but I would like to maybe redirect staff to look at putting as much regulations as we can legally to telling them how they are going to put these things up to make it as best as possible for all of our citizens, because if we can't tell them they can't put it up, then we need to be able to do every single thing that we can do, I would feel like. So I don't know if maybe at the next meeting, we get the ordinance back to us, but maybe we can then look at it then and provide more feedback to staff of what to do. But, I know there's other precedents that's been sent to us about legal cases that are challenging this. And so if other communities are challenging this, then there's no reason why we shouldn't be able to pursue that, I guess. I say no reason. If other cities and counties are challenging it, then we should maybe have an option to look into that possibly. Because if they're doing it, then maybe why aren't we? So, because I'm tired of just constantly, they're going up everywhere. Wooden ones, black ones, and then again, if this is only AT&T, it's only gonna get worse. And I think somebody mentioned last time we were trying to underground everything. And I forget who mentioned that, but while we're undergrounding everything, they're just popping these things up left and right, then we're going to underground certain things, and we'll have all these ugly little, poles just randomly in people's front yards or right-of-ways. So that was my only questions, but I look forward to the ordinance, and I'll look into it and probably have some more thoughts next meeting. So thank you.
Sorry. So building on what Mr. Schmidt said, is it possible for us to require color, size, location, material, camouflage, whatever? And then secondly, can we require, and is it even possible for us to require that Verizon share poles with AT&T, T-Mobile the same, or whatever companies there are out there. Is that a possibility?
So we can't do anything that interferes with their ability to operate and function as they need to. So it's kind of a technical discussion sometimes with them as to whether we can require them to co-locate or not. So sometimes yes and sometimes no to some of those questions. And same thing with the aesthetics. There's some things that we can do, and it can't be anything overly cumbersome or expensive where it can be interpreted as to be in effect prohibiting them. But we can certainly, try to camouflage. Yes, we can camouflage. We can ask them to do the coloring, cover with certain landscaping and those things. Yeah, and that's in the ordinance. And it's a policy decision for the council as to whether they want to try to take on that lobby and that law. So, I mean, at some point, if you all want to discuss that, staff can bring you back information on what the other local governments are doing. And that's a cost that you would consider if it's something you want to take on.
I would suggest we'll all read the ordinance, and then if a member thinks that it needs to be back on the agenda, I suggest you put it on and we'll kick it around some more.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, I'm going to add in here the item that we walked on at the beginning of the meeting. As you all are aware, Mr. Skip Overdyer had to tender his resignation on Friday for valid reasons to go help his family. So that creates a vacancy that we will need to fill. We have the ability to fill it on a temporary basis and then fairly swiftly fill it on a permanent basis. And Kyle is prepared to discuss the way we've handled this in the past to give council an idea of how we should move forward.
Thanks, Lance. Yeah, so pursuant to section 3.09C2 of our city charter, when there is a resignation and there is over a year remaining on that term, two things have to happen. First, the council needs to appoint somebody to fill that seat in the interim, and then within 60 to 90 days, the council needs to hold a special election. The city needs to hold a special election. So Ray today has been working with Mr. Paul Lux, the supervisor of elections, on coming up with a time schedule of when these occurrences can take place. What we'd recommend, and this is consistent with what happened when Tuffy Dixon tendered his resignation, is that Ray can advertise this in the advertise the appointment position in the newspaper this Friday, and Catherine can get that out through social media. We'd recommend that advertisement period run for a period of about 2 weeks till May 24th, which is a Monday, and then it would end. This would give city staff enough time to get that item onto the June 7th agenda, at which point those who have decided to run for the appointment position, which would be by majority vote by council, would come to the meeting and state their case in front of the council. At that meeting, the council would then appoint a new member by majority vote. That member then would not take the seat on June 7th because they still need to be reconfirmed and sworn in at the next regularly scheduled meeting. So they would actually take their seat at the June 21st meeting. Then what will happen is, in the meantime, Mr. Lux does not have to run the city elections, but in this particular instance, he has indicated that he will be willing to do so. We'll need to have a separate contract with Mr. Lux in his office so that he will agree to run the election, which of course the city will have to pay for. Fortunately or unfortunately, Paul and I have gotten pretty good at coming up with these contracts in the last couple of years, so I don't anticipate that'll be an issue. In that contract, it will specify the qualification period, the timeline, and all that, and when, whether there will be early voting allowed, things of that nature. So we'll bring that back to the council in the interim while this appointment process is running through. The special election, Mr. Lux has agreed for it to take place on July 20th, which is the day after your second regularly scheduled July meeting. That council member would then be sworn in on August 2nd, and that seat would run through the same as Skip's seat, November 2022. And all of that, according to that timeline, will adhere to your city charter 3.09 provision.
Okay, do we have any questions? Ms. Ramswell?
So, if I'm understanding correctly, we're looking at only having an appointed person seated for not even a full month. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. The seat would be for the June 21, July, the first meeting in July and the second meeting in July. So it'd be 3 meetings that person would sit.
It seems like when Tuffy Dixon stepped down, Mr. Mitchell was up here for months before we fitted into a regular election. Is that incorrect, or was that a different?
I'd have to defer to Ray because he's done a lot of research on this lately, but I believe this is the same timeline we used when Tuffy resigned. So I would assume it'd be the same period of time.
It was about the same timeline, but he won a special election. It may seem that it's longer. So, but it's really you don't have to have the application. If you recall, I believe in 2015, when Mayor Ponder stepped down to run for office, previous Mayor Sam Severs volunteered, and the council appointed her as interim mayor. So you can do that again if you wish. So it's your.
So technically, we could appoint someone, I don't know if anyone's prepared tonight, but next council meeting if we wanted to try to.
Right.
Yeah,
Have a little
Councilmember
bit-
Ramswell, there's no specific process described in the charter regarding that. What I described to you is just the process we went through when Councilmember Dixon had resigned. But theoretically, yes, if a majority of the council wanted to appoint somebody tonight, you could do that.
Is it required for us to actually even appoint someone? Could we just wait till July 19th?
Is required under the charter that you appoint somebody in the interim.
Thank you.
I would throw out there that not to do that exact schedule, but just have at the next meeting, whoever is interested between now and then, send it in as well as show up. And with all the social media presence and everything online and all the good old Facebook groups that we have that run around the city, I mean, the word will get out pretty quickly in the next 24 hours. And then that way, at the next meeting, we can hopefully just have the appointment presented and voted on, just a thought, rather than waiting 2 more weeks.
Assuming that city staff would be okay with shortening the advertisement process, there's no reason under the charter why that can't be accommodated.
Well, my thoughts are, if somebody cares enough to be on this council, they're watching this meeting if they're not here. And if they're not paying attention to city, information that's going out there, maybe they're not a candidate we want to select for council. You need to be up on the issues and know what's going on to be helpful up here on the dais.
Can we do it at the next meeting, Ray?
The only requirements if you're going to appoint someone is that the individual has to be a Destin resident and qualified to run at a city election. Those are the 2 requirements.
So we would have to make sure that we can, Supervisor Lux has to verify those requirements. So we would have to make sure that we have enough time for him to verify if we shorten the advertisement processes.
Any idea how much time he needs?
I believe he can turn that around in a day or 2, is my understanding. Ray, is that your understanding too?
We don't have to advertise, yes.
Are you saying that somebody can't just show up at the meeting and throw their name in the hat? They have to apply? Is that what I'm hearing you say?
No, it is easier, and this is why we have traditionally done an advertisement and in applications, because that way we can ensure on the front end that everybody is qualified who seeks the appointment. However, like I said, theoretically, the council could appoint somebody tonight, and then on the back end, between this meeting and the next meeting, we would take that information to Paul Lux, and he would verify it or tell us. That's not somebody that lives in the city of Destin.
Worst case scenario, somebody just showed up that night and we, for some reason, all majority wanted to vote for that person, but they didn't go through the pre-screening process. The understanding would be that, yeah, we're voting for you that as long as you meet these requirements, and if Paul Lux the next 48 hours tells us you don't, then we're going to be back at square one. So,
yep, there's nothing wrong with that in the charter.
Am I jumping the gun here we've got, I know Parker and Chatham they're both already qualified. Huh?
Pre-qualified by virtue of their seats
Just
before.
saying. Just throwing it out there.
And that was going to be my question too, is what Mr. King was saying was, we can assume then that anybody that has run for council previously or sat in one of these seats meets those requirements unless they've moved.
Yeah, almost assuredly they will meet those requirements unless they've gotten a felony or they have moved.
Let me ask you one more complicating question. What if it is a member who has served his 2 terms and is termed out?
Somebody who has served the 2 terms and is termed out this term, because I believe it skips, it's the
That's
overlap.
exactly right. I think they wouldn't qualify.
I agree.
Well, I'd like to.
That was negative, right?
You need a motion for this? Or?
You said you didn't think they would qualify.
Mr. Destin, if I may. The case with Mayor Ponder, he reached out to Mayor Sievers, or ex-Mayor Sievers, and she agreed to run, and the council agreed to appoint Mayor Sievers at the time. So you can pick someone that you know and recommend it to the council.
If staff is okay with it, I'll make the motion that we have at the next meeting, the opportunity to appoint a new interim council person.
Second.
And between now and then, advertising, Facebook applications, as much as we can get, we'll get it.
Yeah, second.
Discussion on that, and of course, since this is a walk-on motion, it would have to pass with an extraordinary vote, which I suspect that it will. But just for the record, any other discussion?
Mr. Destin, do you want us to use the application that you approved in 2019?
That application, I think, would be sufficient, council. If that was only 2 years ago, was the one we used when Duffy resigned. So.
I would say we can use the application without any problem. All right, with no other discussion, we'll have our roll call vote. Mr. Schmidt?
Yes.
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 Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, that one passed unanimously.
Just a few quick announcements, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. On May the 10th, we're planning to hold the Crosstown Connector Workshop in this room at 5:30 p.m. Public is invited. On May the 17th, at 4:45, myself, the mayor, and a few others will be meeting to sign some paperwork, which will be followed by a 5:30 CRA board meeting, and Ms. Strickland can explain the purpose of this meeting.
All right, May 17th. May 17th, we will have our bond counsel, financial advisor, and everybody in the room to do a pre-closing for the loan that we're about to take. We'll all be meeting here at 4:45 p.m., and that'll be followed by a CRA meeting at 5:30 p.m. This loan that we're taking out, because we're refunding 2 other pieces of debt as well as issuing some new money, the loan itself is a little complex in that the Harbor CRA will continue to make its repayments on its portion of the refunded amount. So we need to establish an interlocal agreement between the City of Destin and the Harbor CRA that will be brought to that May 17th CRA meeting. And that's, I think that's about it for the May 17th CRA meeting.
Yep, that's right. And just for the new members, the CRA, the city council sits as the CRA. So you will sit as the CRA at 5:30, and then you'll sit as the city council at 6 o'clock, and we'll see if y'all can work out a deal amongst yourselves at that time.
Now, a couple more real quick. Happy to report that the view corridor at the shores at Crystal Beach Park got a little bit bigger today. The building that was located on the far eastern parcel that we acquired a few months back was brought down today, and they will be removing the debris and should be completing that work within the next days. So we're happy to see that happen and that park moving forward on its expansion as council's #1 priority for this current year. Lastly, I just wanted to give Louis the opportunity to say a few words about, he's got a couple new employees. I know he's happy to see them come on board this morning. So Louis, I'll turn it over to you.
Yes, thank you. I think Councilmember Herbert touched on this earlier. So I have good news and bad news. I'll give you the bad news first. To my right, our principal planner for the last 2.5 years will be leaving us. She and her husband, who's in the military, will be relocating. Lauren has been an excellent member of our department, and we'll be sorry to miss her. On the good side, we have 2 members that started today, one a planner and one a building inspector. So we're inching forward. We're not quite there where we need to be, but we're making some progress, even though we're losing some folks. So our efforts will continue to move forward. On another note, the office as of today is now open 5 days a week, 8 to 5. Thank you much.
Lauren, I know you'll be missed. You've been a real asset, but good luck to you.
Missed greatly.
Lauren, thank you for all you've done. Have you got a great turnover book so that you can make sure what all the stuff you've been doing, the new guy gets the info? Louis, help her get time.
And I want to thank you personally, and I guess you'll be remoting in like Kim does, right? So we're not really going to lose you? Thanks for your service.
Thank you, Mr. Destin. First, we have item 5A. This is the first reading of ordinance 2111 CN, an ordinance of the City of Destin, Florida, authorizing the issuance of the city's non-ad valorem refunding revenue note, Series 2021, in the principal amount of not to exceed $10,600,000 for the purpose of financing the acquisition of certain real property within the city to be used to expand public beach access, refunding on a current basis the city's outstanding non-ad valorem refunding revenue note, Series 2015A, and refunding on a current basis the outstanding Harbor Community Redevelopment Area Phase 1 revenue note, Series 2009, issued by the Community Redevelopment Agency of the City of Destin, Florida, providing that the note shall be a limited obligation of the city payable from non-ad valorem revenues budgeted, appropriated, and deposited as provided herein, providing for the rights, securities, and remedies for the owner of the note, authorizing certain officials and employees of the city to take all actions required in connection with the sale, issuance, and delivery of such note, making certain covenants and agreements in connection therewith, and providing for an effective date. And I'll just really briefly mention on this matter, Council, that this ordinance is necessary because in our charter, we have a provision that when we issue debt, we have to do that by ordinance. So that is why this ordinance is being brought with you at the same time that we brought back the RFP item from KeyBank. And I would also like to turn this item over to our bond counsel, Dwayne Draper of the law firm Bryant, Miller and Olive, and he was the primary architect of this ordinance. So Dwayne, if you are available, and you have any further comments on that, could you please go ahead?
Sorry, he's actually currently unavailable at the moment. We are working on it.
All right, Dwayne is unavailable at the moment then, but if you have any questions on this 15-page complicated finance ordinance, I will be happy to try and answer them.
Public comment. Any on this very complicated refinance that's going to save us a lot of money we anticipate? Okay, I don't see any public comment. I'll turn it over to the council for a
I'll make
motion.
that motion. Make the motion to move to approve ordinance 21-1111-CN on first reading and direct city staff to advertise for second reading on May 17th, 2021.
Second.
You're the only one that can hear me, huh? Okay, if,
Heard you.
if we don't have any discussion.
The public record might not have heard you.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
the important
Well,
thing,
that
right?
can be a good thing at times. What about?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, unanimously passed. We'll move on to the next one.
Thank you, Mr. Destin. Next, we have item 5B. This is the first reading of ordinance 2112 CN, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Destin, Florida, amending the fiscal year 2021 budget as designated in the attached Exhibit A, describing amendments necessary to accommodate issuance of the non-ad valorem note, Series 2021, providing for authority, providing for findings of fact, providing for amendment to the 2021 budget, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date. And Council, this is the last companion item of the financial debt issuance items we have before you today. Because we will be taking in $10.6 million, it makes it necessary to amend our budget in a rather significant manner. And this ordinance, upon passage on second reading, will accomplish that and accommodate the 2021 note.
Okay, at this time, we'll open that up to public comment. Do we have any tonight? I don't see any. Any council discussion?
I move to approve ordinance 2112C on first reading and direct city staff to advertise for the second reading on May 17th, 2021.
A second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion at all? We will call the vote. Mr. Schmidt?
Yes.
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 Back on ordinance 21-03-LC.
Thanks again, Mr. Destin. We have the first reading of ordinance 2103LC, an ordinance of the City of Destin, Florida, providing for amendments to Article 7, Section 7.12.08, dimensional requirements, amending Table 7-3, schedule of dimensional requirements in zoning districts, providing for consistency with the city's comprehensive plan, providing for incorporation into the land development code, conflicting provisions, severability, and an effective date. And this is a public hearing as well.
Okay, at this time, we'll open it up to public comment on this ordinance. I don't see any. We'll entertain council action.
Make the motion to approve proposed ordinance 2103 LC on first reading and advise for second reading.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a second. Do we have any discussion? Staff, if just briefly you would explain to us this ordinance I see is bringing the LDC into line with the comp plan as a general principle. That's a good thing?
That's correct. There are just some inconsistencies still between Table 7.3 and the requirements in our comprehensive plan. So this is just a cleanup ordinance to correct those inconsistencies within that table so that our land development code correctly implements our comprehensive plan.
All right. In that case, we do have a motion and a second.
Yes.
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 I vote yes.
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 Okay, that's unanimously passed. We are on D.
Thanks again, Mr. Destin. Next, we have item 5D. This is the first reading of ordinance number 2108 LC, an ordinance of the City of Destin, Florida, providing for amendments to Article 7 of the Land Development Code, land use type, density, intensity, zoning, and regulatory controls, to require multifamily long-term uses to include commercial components in the commercial general CG zoning district, providing for consistency with the comprehensive plan, providing for incorporation into the land development code, conflicting provisions, severability, and an effective date, and this is also a public hearing.
All right, at this time, we'll open this ordinance up to public comment. And I don't see any. Council, we need a motion.
I'll make that motion. I move to approve proposed ordinance 2108 LC on first reading and advertise for the second reading.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. The only discussion, any council discussion on the issue? Seeing none, I just had one question. This is a conditional use anyway, and we are requiring a percentage, 45%, I think, as a minimum to have as publicly leasable commercial space. What is the difference in that and what we have now?
What we have now is that these projects do not have a commercial component at all.
Okay.
And I think this will establish, continue to establish the intent of that district, which is to have as much commercial activities as possible. That's one of the only truly commercial districts that we have in the city.
Thank you. Any other discussion? In that case, we will call a vote.
Yes.
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 I'll vote yes.
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 All right, that one passes unanimously. We will move to E.
All right, last one, the first reading of ordinance number 2024 LC, an ordinance of the City of Destin, Florida, regulating low-speed vehicles, amending Article 8, Transportation, and creating a new Section 8.09.04 entitled Alternative Modes of Transportation, defining low-speed vehicles, providing for limited operation of low-speed vehicles on certain city streets, prohibiting low-speed vehicles on specified streets, providing for findings of fact, providing for incorporation into the Land Development Code, providing for conflicting provisions, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date, and this too is a public hearing.
Okay, at this time, we'll open it up to public comment. Please come forward.
I think specified
Claude,
streets.
Claude Perry, correct?
Claude Perry, 732.
Thank you. I do
Harvard
know.
Boulevard, yes. I was just trying to understand the specified streets. It seems to me we're trying to slow down. One of the specified streets, I think, is Highway 98, Harvard Boulevard. And I think we need to encourage trolleys and other low-speed transportation to move people around from off-site parking and from the city parking lot and so forth. Hopefully parking garages one day. But if I'm concerned that this is going to prohibit that ability, and I'd like a clarification about that if I'm wrong. If you could expand on that a little bit.
Thank you, Mr. Perry. And we'll have to ask our land use attorney. Ms. Cobb?
This is exclusive to low-speed vehicles as defined by statute. So no, it would not affect trolleys.
Well, I guess it depends on what your definition of trolleys. A golf cart that transports 8 people or 6 people, is that a trolley or not a trolley? To me, we need to slow down the traffic on 98 on Harbor Boulevard, and this is a pretty good way to do it. So I'm a little confused about the definition of a trolley. A golf cart that hauls 6, 8, 10 people is not a trolley. It's a golf cart, electric cart. So that's what I'm trying to get a little clarification on.
Okay, so to understand what you're saying, on 98, low-speed vehicles are already not allowed under state law. So all we've proposed in this ordinance is to prohibit them on certain streets that are in addition to what state law prohibits, such as a portion of Gulf Shore Drive and Airport Road. But I can defer to, is Mike Burgess here? Yeah, staff, because they have more details about why certain roads were put in or out.
So if you, a trolley was moving from on Melbourne, moving toward the harbor on Marla, from Palmetto, moving toward the harbor, it has to cross 98. Is that going to be permitted or not permitted?
I'd like to make a motion if I could, and hopefully we can get your questions answered.
During public testimony, we...
Okay.
But Mr. Perry, I'm assure you that those questions are going to be asked. I have some of the same, those questions are going to be asked during council discussion. I have some misgivings myself, and perhaps Mr. Schmidt does also. So we'll get to those questions.
Mr. Burgess, were you going to address the information of streets, please?
So again, we're in public hearing where we're supposed to be listening for the public. I'm sorry?
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem,
Yes.
I would like to speak up for this portion. The previous council that was seated actually gave staff the instruction to bring these roads forward. That's why these roads are currently
Yes,
listed the way they
I
are.
understand. Any other public comment? All right, then we will turn it over to the council for action then.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion, and I appreciate all the hard work that staff is doing, but I'm going to go off script and make a motion to disregard this current map and to follow the state of Florida's laws in regards to low-speed vehicles, that we only enforce that.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Kyle, this is all quite all right under the legality of public hearings and we advertise. Is it proper to do that, or are we just supposed to not adopt the ordinance?
So I think that really we're probably going to have to amend the ordinance and go back to the LPA and take that.
Wait. No. If what you're trying to do is not adopt any ordinance, I think you're just saying you want to go with state law. So if you just want to go with state law, you can just not pass the ordinance and we will have no ordinance and we will fall under state law. So that's fine, but I think Councilmember Destin's question was with regard to the public hearing, if I'm hearing that correctly. We have to just make sure the public is finished speaking, and then if they are, you can go with your motion.
Right, and I think they are, and that was the point I was trying to make, was that the proper direction is just not to adopt the ordinance, and then we fall back to state law.
Correct.
So do I need to, I can remove my motion then? Do I need to remove that off the record, or?
I mean, I think that the motion is just not to adopt the ordinance.
Okay. I'll make the motion not to adopt this ordinance.
And I'll second that.
Okay, I don't think we do that either. If nobody makes the motion to
It just dies.
if no one makes the motion to adopt it,
I'm sorry, I was just doing what the attorney said, to make a motion to not adopt
Sorry,
the ordinance.
you
That's
followed
what
me
you
very,
said.
you followed me very literally there. I just meant that the effect
We pay you for your
is-
legal advice, and that's what you told me to do.
maybe too much.
Just shred it and say it never happened.
I'm going to rewind the tapes and just start over.
well, what we look for is, does anyone wish to make a motion to adopt the ordinance or adopt it as amended? So is there a motion to adopt the ordinance?
Well, I have discussion, but I don't I think we need to have some sort of motion in order to have discussion, but I would think we'd need discussion to just let the motion die.
Well, we can waive the requirement for a motion on this occasion.
So I guess my question is this: there's been a lot of back and forth between prior council and LPA. I don't know if it went to Public Works and Safety or not, but I'm just wondering why we ended up going this direction with this particular ordinance if it makes the most logical sense to just not move forward and abide by what the state says. Why didn't we do that to begin with and save all the trouble of going through the committees and council?
I think that was our original motion when we came with the thing to begin with, but the council decided to exclude additional streets.
So tell me about the state ordinance then. Does it already disallow those streets and make this redundant? Or explain to me what the differences would be.
I can help. The state statute declares that roads with speed limits of 35 or less that are not state or federal highways can be used by low-speed vehicles.
Can we hear from the captain back there, please?
I was glad to see you stand up. I was like, come up here.
Good evening, council. One of the sheriff's office's biggest concerns is Airport Road. If you follow state statute, low-speed vehicles are going to be allowed on Airport Road if you just do not have an ordinance. So that was one of our biggest concerns.
Can I ask you a question, sir?
Sir, yes, sir.
would you rather have an ordinance that now you have to fight and try to enforce people that are going to still use it because most likely they're not going to stop going down? Like, what would that not make it even harder now because now you have an ordinance saying you can't drive, but now we're calling y'all constantly, why aren't you stopping these people driving on the road?
I'm sworn to protect and serve, and if it saves one child from getting run over on an LSV, it's worth those that got away with it that we didn't catch, but having the ordinance in place to hopefully save maybe one life is worth it.
Yeah,
in my opinion.
I agree that safety is very important. I'm 100% in agreement with that.
So that part of Airport Road, you're saying at 98 where Airport Road begins as a 4-lane, all the way up to where it tees at Main Street, that is the section that you're saying we should have no golf carts allowed?
In our opinion, no low-speed vehicles should be allowed on any portion of Airport Road. It's just, I mean, it is a high traffic, I mean, we talk about the crosstown connector. People already use Airport Road as a crosstown connector, and tourists come in here and low-speed vehicle comes with their rental house. They don't know the rules. The first thing they're going to do, it's hard enough to keep them off 98. They're going to come down and try and cut across Airport, try to go over to the harbor, and Lord forbid if somebody running 55 miles an hour around that curve wipes out a golf cart full of a family. That's the sheriff's office concern. So,
Captain, what is a low-speed vehicle? Is it the miles per hour that it doesn't exceed?
yes, sir.
So a low-speed vehicle cannot,
Yes, sir.
they don't exceed 25 miles an hour? or-
35 miles an hour, can't be on a road posted over 35 miles an hour. Yeah, there's certain different requirements, and a lot of people don't understand that you still have to utilize seat belts, have proper licensing and all that stuff. It doesn't, neglect all of those rules that you have to follow.
And aren't there golf carts that are built to go 45, 50 miles an hour?
There are, but
So
those
they
are not
wouldn't
called,
fall under
those
this?
do not meet the statutory definition of a low-speed vehicle.
Okay.
So you're saying are those allowed on Airport Road?
They're not.
Okay.
They're not strict legal. They don't meet the definition of a low-speed vehicle.
Sorry, I was confused. I apologize.
So Kyle, can you tell us how this could be done to where we just followed what the captain suggested?
Okay, I don't know if I followed all that the captain suggested, but I think what Kim and I were just talking as well. I think what the council and Captain Howell were suggesting was to basically adopt an ordinance aligning it with the state statute so that they would enforce the state rules. Is that what was being discussed, sir?
We have to have an ordinance that we also say that they can't operate on Airport Road, they can't operate on Main Street. And we have an ordinance that says that they can operate on multiple streets in our city, but there's a few that we feel like that are dangerous, like Airport Road, that they shouldn't be able to operate on. And if we just went with state requirements, then they would be able to operate on that. So I think, like Captain said, we need an ordinance that we can kind of fine tune to our city that they can enforce.
Yeah, I didn't realize that was a discussion. In that case, then yeah, certainly an ordinance like this would have to be adopted.
Well,
similar.
and I understand completely the law enforcement's concern, but the reason that Airport Road is dangerous is not because of low-speed vehicles, it's because we can't control the speed. And so, as much as I do appreciate what he's saying, this city was one of the first cities to adopt multimodal and, to ban these low-speed vehicles in this area makes it impossible for us to have a low-speed vehicle corridor through the city, which I'm thinking is probably contrary to our adoption of our goals under multimodal. So, I'm not so sure which direction to dodge in this, other than I know the real problem we have on airport is speeding cars, and mixing the low-speed vehicles into that is not causing the problem. It'll just be a result of the problem that presently exists.
I'd like to move forward. Was that call to order, or?
Can I request clarification? So at present, the state rule is no golf carts on roads 35 and above. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, an airport is at, what, 35? That sounds incredible because nobody goes 35. So looking at our golf cart policy, it says policy 1-2 is directly from the Florida statutes. The city will not set policy that conflicts with state law. So aren't we talking right now about trying to potentially allow something on a road that would conflict with the state law?
The opposite. We're talking about prohibiting something on a road where it's allowed by state law.
So by making it stricter, that's okay. You just can't be more lenient.
That is legally acceptable. I'll leave it to you as to whether it's okay.
Thank you.
We do have an ordinance in place, do we not?
No, because we are right now just following state law. So low-speed vehicles or golf carts are not allowed on most roads, but if the road has a speed limit of 35, they're currently allowed on those roads, unless we pass an ordinance that is stricter than state statute.
But I swear we've passed something that had a map on it that was marked in green like this, that showed where golf carts were allowed to go and where they were allowed to cross 98.
I think that's what this is, and it's new
So this
form after going through the committees, maybe.
It's been revised many times. This ordinance has been to committees. I think it's been to council on first reading before. It keeps being changed. It's never passed yet.
Okay, just as a point of correction, it's Michael back here. The map that James has up right now, it was a very early version of the low-speed vehicle ordinance. It was one of the first maps that we produced. You'll notice over on the west end of town, you'll see a lot of red roads, Palmetto, Marlar, streets over there are red. Those were specifically identified in the old golf cart policy from 2007, I believe. So that is an older map. Can you pull up the first one, the other one there, James? Okay, there it is. These were the streets that were specifically not exempted, but restricted in that golf cart policy. That's the very first map that we could find reflective of where you could travel. But the original golf cart policy specifically identified streets where you could not operate a golf cart or a low-speed vehicle. It's actually called the golf cart policy from 15 years ago. It is not an ordinance, it's a policy.
Well,
On this 2007 policy, it states, Policy 1, golf carts shall not be operated on any pedestrian facility driving on a sidewalk or bicycle path. Policy 2, golf carts shall not be operated on any public road. Reference Florida Statute 316-212, operation of golf carts on certain roadways. So,
well, I think we are confusing golf carts with low-speed vehicles. They are not the same. We need a motion, or this will die from lack of a motion.
A motion or emotion?
Now, we have the opportunity to let this issue settle in our minds for 2 weeks and address it again at the next meeting. So this is not something that we absolutely have to mark on. And of course, the motion to table to the next meeting would be a proper motion.
I mean, I already tried giving a motion. The only motion I can give is the motion that's written on the piece of paper, right?
No, you can make any motion.
That's what I tried doing. I make a motion that we do not
Well, you can
approve
table
this.
it.
Y'all said I can't do that.
You could table it indefinitely without a specific date, and then at any point in the future, if somebody wants to bring it up again, anybody
That's it.
can.
So a motion to table would accomplish what you want to do
So I can't make a motion not to pass this ordinance?
That would be no motion at all, and it just dies.
So a motion to table
I'm just saying, what if I don't want to table it indefinitely?
So a motion to table indefinitely would have the effect of.
I understand what it would have, but what if I don't want to table it indefinitely, and I want to say I want to have a motion to not pass this ordinance?
Well, that's not allowed under Robert's rules, unfortunately.
Okay.
Okay. Ms. Abear, I'm going to pass the gravel to you. Ms. Abear, I'm going to pass the gravel to you. That allows me to make a motion, doesn't it?
Okay.
I'll make a motion to table. Did I get a second?
You didn't touch your mic. Oh, you were doing what Dewey did.
Yep.
Second.
Mike? Yes.
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 I vote yes.
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 That motion passes, and I'll remind everybody that a motion to table can be,
Overturned by any.
at the next meeting, you can make a motion to put it back on the table. So if you come up with a solution, Mr. Schmidt, I would love to.
Oh, no solution. I was just going to give, again, I was on, I think, 2 committees where this was 2 years ago. I mean, I feel bad for the staff, I guess, but I mean, I have no solutions. I'm good to go. Thank you. And I'm sorry for the staff.
I think by tabling it, it saves the work for the staff, that it can sit and grow cobwebs, and in 8 years, if some other council brings it up, it's ready to just, here it is, y'all go ahead and tell us what you think.
Motion to approve.
I'll second it.
Mr. Schmidt, how do you vote on that motion?
Yes.
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 Mike, now we are on the comments. No, we aren't. We're on a letter of support to E. Bryan Memorial Justice. That was.
No,
okay,
that's
never mind.
Watkins.
Okay, we got that one.
It's Rodney's time.
It's already getting to be a long night. Okay, comments from press, from the council and the mayor. Councilman Braden, you are on.
Woo-hoo, thanks. I just have 2 questions tonight. I know, last year, we were trying to get the, lawn pumps or sprinklers working on 98 in the medians, and I know that we still have a couple of them that don't even exist. Did we just stop on that, just give up, or where are we at with that project, please?
Okay, the contract for the landscape improvements in the medians is supposed to let in August.
One more time?
The contract for the median landscaping enhancements on 98 from Airport Road to the bridge, that contract is supposed to let by DOT in August of this year. And it includes irrigation improvements.
Okay, thank you. I haven't been down there, but have we done any striping at the boat ramp, or where is that at?
Councilor Braden, we haven't done any striping. We have, forgive me, we have been running around like chickens with our heads cut off for the past couple of weeks, but we will get to that as soon as we can.
Okay, that's all I want to know is where we was at with. Thank you so much. That's all I have tonight, Mr. Destin.
Okay, Councilmember Ranswell.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. The first item I have on here is determining the harbor CRA boundary line. And this was brought to me by a member of the harbor CRA who was concerned that the south portion of the harbor, meaning Noriega Point and any of the properties that lie on that south portion, were not included. And the question was, why not? And is that something that we should look into potentially amending? So if city attorney or land use attorney would like to elaborate on that?
Yeah, so the CRA boundary lines were set back when the CRA was first put into existence. And Councilmember Destin probably has more of the history of that than I do. But essentially, CRA districts are intended to help quote-unquote blighted areas, which is a defined term under the statute. And so it's really intended for areas where there are low property values that have the potential of increasing. And then the difference in the increased property value and the set property value at the time the CRA came into existence goes into what's called a TIF fund, which is then used to rejuvenate that area. And so I was not around when that CRA was first instituted, but I imagine that was the thought process. And it can certainly be looked at, expanding a CRA boundary, but I will just, my off-the-cuff observation on that particular area you were discussing is that that's a relatively affluent area, and generally affluent areas would not be included in quote-unquote blighted districts, because it would be difficult to increase the property values and increase that TIF revenue ultimately for the entirety of the district. But if the council wishes us to take a look at it, we certainly can do that.
So I guess my question would be, I don't personally consider that north shore of the harbor area blighted or not affluent. So why would it be included but not the south portion? And Mr. Destin, maybe since you were on.
I will try to enlighten you, and Kyle hit it on the head. State law said what was blighted, and there were some definitions. The council at the time was able to shoehorn the North Shore into it. They didn't really think they could with Holiday Isle, which of course is probably the most affluent area in Destin at that time. The other consideration was, as he was speaking, when you form a CRA, you stop the flow of the money into the general revenue, and it's capped at that date. And as it goes up, that money doesn't go to general revenue, it goes over to the CRA fund. And so we had already taken a bite of some of the most valuable land in the city, and we were going to be diverting any increases away from the general fund. And at the time, we felt that was a bridge too far to include all of Holiday Isle. We could quite easily cripple the general fund for 20 or 30 years. And so that was a compromise, and that was left out. And to look at the issue again, you're going to run into the same issues that we had then. As it is now, as property values go up outside of the CRA, that increase goes to the general revenue fund. As any increases occur inside the CRA, they bypass the general revenue and go into the CRA aisle. And that is a recipe for disaster with your general fund, which we have suffered a number of problems with that over the years, is why we have constantly been short. And so that is the issue. If you want to include it, perhaps we could find some way to call it blighted as to transportation or some other extraordinary reason and get it in there. Probably would be an unwise thing to do, as long as we think we need to have a general revenue to run the general operation of the cities.
So by comparison then, the Harbor Waterways Board, do they actually see both and have jurisdiction, if you will, over both the north and the south side?
So the Harbor and Waterways Board, jurisdiction is a good word to call it, is really for any sort of dock development that comes throughout the city. So yes, both south and north side of the harbor would be included in that, so long as it's that specific type of development.
Okay, because I guess the concern was they were thinking that any potential plans or things the city was going to do with the Noriega Point project, which in the past there were some elements of the Noriega Point project that were brought to them for discussion, and they thought, well, why are we getting pieces of the south shore of the harbor but not everything? And so that's why I wanted to bring it up, was just to get some clarity on that and what was included, what was not. Are we strictly enforcing what they actually oversee, or are we not?
Just to clarify, the Harbor CRA, it's an advisory committee for really the CRA. Now, oftentimes throughout those meetings, as Lewis and I can both attest, as always attending those meetings, you know, they do talk about a wide variety of things that would affect the harbor more at large, and that's okay. But yeah, they don't actually oversee any of the development of that process. That's stuff that is described in your LDC and comp plan would ultimately come before the council. So.
Okay, thank you for addressing that, and I'm sure they'll get the minutes, or I can relay that to my appointee, unless council has something further to discuss about it. The next point I have sort of builds on this same sort of idea, and that was their concern that the harbor capacity study make sure to include all slips. So if you could discuss the plan in terms of that study and what it is actually going to include in terms of slips.
Yes, so we're looking at all capacity levels for the harbor. That means the parking as well as the vehicle transportation as well as the water transportation. And so slips will be covered in the study as well as parking areas in the harbor will be covered in the study.
And that includes slips that are in the canals as well?
Correct. The study area is the harbor and its environment.
Okay, terrific. All right, I guess that's it for that question. I did have another question that is sort of related, but it's not directly, and that was regarding the running of our pump. Is it running 24 hours a day right now, or is it still only very randomly? And then in that regard, when was the last study that was done on the water quality in that area?
Okay, I can address that. The harbor pump's been down for a few weeks. We had a issue with the universal joint on the drive shaft. That drive shaft has been ordered and it has been received. We had the motor over for the past week or 10 days over in a shop in Fort Walton, kind of getting a tune-up while we had where we were waiting on the universal joint and shaft. All of that will be reassembled and put back together, and we've been running it traditionally, well, not traditionally, but recently, 6 hours a day, 4 to 6 hours a day. And we ran it 2 hours every week in the wintertime, just to kind of keep it loose, so it wouldn't just sit there and freeze up in the off-season. The last time we pulled a water analysis for the harbor was back late March, and we got the results maybe 10 days ago. That was the last time. But even when the pump's not running, if the pump were even to exist, that 7-foot diameter pipe from the intake to the harbor opens a flap valve, and during high tide, I believe it's estimated about 10,000 gallons a minute goes through that flap valve into the harbor. So it's water's coming from the Gulf into the harbor, whether or not the pump's running or not, but it certainly does get a help when the pump does run. And we're looking to get that put back together and back running as soon as we can.
Thank you. One of the questions I received was what was actually included in the water study that is done periodically, and that apparently the different elements, minerals, and metals that are tested now are not the same as ones that have been tested in the past, and that there was a point, and maybe Mr. Destin would recall this, where the findings were so concerning that there's actually a moratorium on building slips and having any sort of development along the harbor. And I'm just wondering if anyone knows what the differences in those metals and elements were and why those are no longer tested.
I think the state of Florida was doing that testing, and they did in fact threaten a moratorium on any construction in the harbor, and that's what led to the construction of the pipe. I guess they are just not doing that testing anymore, or take it for granted that what we've done has made it better.
So I guess my next question would be, could someone look for a comparison of, let's say, what was tested 1999 versus what we checked for in 09 and then versus today, perhaps? 'Cause obviously where I'm leading with this is there's a concern that the water in many areas is so horrible they don't even want to get in it, and it looks a whole lot worse than it did when a moratorium was issued.
Through code compliance, we can get you that information.
Terrific, thank you. Next thing I had on here was the Noriega Point submerged land lease, and I neglected to bring this up at the last meeting, even though I had received an update personally from our attorney. So if you wouldn't mind doing that for the public to hear as well.
Sure thing, Preble. As we discussed at a previous council meeting, really the major hiccup on this application is the requirement that we present engineered drawings along with the application to FDEP. To that end, staff has engaged in some back and forth with FDEP, and both sides have agreed to a pre-application meeting. We got 2 times, one this Wednesday and one next Wednesday, and we're coordinating with Councilmember Ramswell on finalizing that time, and Councilmember Ramswell will be attending that meeting.
Thank you for that update. I know several members of the public keep querying me as the status, so thank you for that. The next item I had, and it's not on here, but I had sent an email to Mr. Burgess, I believe last week, regarding the condition of the county right-of-way along Commons and a request that it be mowed and attended to. Mr. Burgess, if you wouldn't mind addressing that situation.
I'd be happy to. When I received your email, we've been reaching out to the county. They maintain that area along Commons Drive, kind of close to the Home Depot, around to our roundabout that's right outside this building here. I've ridden that road many times, and I would concur with you, what its condition typically looks like, especially in the growing season. And what we've done is we've approached our median maintenance contractor for some proposals that I'm going to be talking to the city manager and deputy city manager about here coming up, as far as our options, as far as maybe some improved maintenance in that area with the county's concurrence. Just stay tuned on that one. I don't have anything concrete yet, but we are working that problem.
I appreciate it, because as you've acknowledged, and I think we all are aware of, many people think that's Destin, and Destin's not mowing, and Destin's not doing this, and that north side, for the most part, is not Destin. So thank you for looking into that. I appreciate it. And my final thing this evening is the Week of Blessings next week is occurring, which is obviously a huge event here in Destin. And I am very proud to announce that on Wednesday, they have agreed to, or actually they came to us, us being Destin High School, about making Wednesday the blessing of the marketplace at Destin High School, and the high school being the beneficiary of any donations that they would receive. So we are so very honored to be, the recipient of that, and just thrilled to death to be a part of the entire event. So we're encouraging everyone to come out and, of course, participate in all the different events of the Week of the Blessing. That particular day is the blessing of the marketplace, but of course we always know that there's the blessing of the families, and this runs Sunday through Thursday with the blessing of the fleet on Thursday. So I encourage everyone to participate in this event. It's obviously just a very core element that has really grown and grown over the last years. So great thanks to them, and they would have been here in person, but they are actually doing another incredibly wonderful thing for the high school that will be unveiled that day at the high school on Wednesday. So again, my thanks to them and to everyone for their support of the school. And that's all I have for tonight. I can't speak at all. Thank you.
Thank you. I will move myself to the end in Mayor Jarvis's place. That leaves us with Councilmember Abe Bear. Did you have anything else that you wanted to bring up?
I have nothing else, thank you.
Okay, Councilmember King.
Nothing tonight, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Schmidt, you have a few things.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity. I'd first like to make the motion to nominate Mr. Alexander Santos to the Town Center CRA Advisory Committee.
Second.
Yes.
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 That one passes unanimously.
Well, I'm not turning mine off, because I'm still talking. Yeah. I will say, Mr. Santos, I'll add, not only does he live just off Main Street, he also has a business in the Town Center CRA, so I'm very excited to have him on that committee.
He's a great guy.
Mr. Michael and the staff has been very awesome giving me some details on the airport road curve. So the only thing I'm going to ask at this point is, can you remind me on what you told me when they're slated to start again? I know it's coming up this summer, I think you said.
Yes, sir. I spoke to two individuals at FDOT this past week. Mr. Ed Hudick, he's a construction engineer. Mr. Andrew White, he is in the construction office. They have both relayed to me that we're looking at the start of construction first week of June
Do they have a projected
of
length?
2021.
Sorry. I was hoping you were going to say, I wasn't questioning that, but I'm glad. Do they have a projected length of time for this project?
Well, the scope of work is, and I think I've forwarded you the construction documents, and the rest of the council, I believe, has seen them as well. What they're going to be doing is milling and resurfacing the section of Airport Road, and they're going to be installing a top coat of a material called a high friction surface treatment. It's a very hard aggregate material. It doesn't polish. Your tires hold to it better in wet and dry conditions. In addition to that, they're going to be putting up some new signage to include a speed detecting speed limit sign there, the kind of a, the 35 mile an hour, and then it'll tell you what you're actually going. I think the advisory is 25 around that curve. The other thing is new pavement markings and reflective pavement markers in that area. So, week, 2 weeks. But it is kind of like I was telling the city manager this morning, if a contractor tells you a week, it's going to be a month. I'm just playing. But hopefully we'll get this thing started and wrapped up as soon as we can.
Thank you, and thank you for sending me the links. They were very helpful, so I do appreciate that.
My pleasure.
As well. I don't have this on here, but I had a follow-up with a citizen that sent us some information over on Cross Street. She had an issue at her house. And I've spoken to staff members, I've spoken to her, and multiple people, nobody on the council, of course. And I'm just curious, I know we are not in the business of handing out warranties to people, but if I was impacted as a homeowner by a job that a contractor that the city hired out, and the result is what she's experiencing, what are we doing to give her assurance tomorrow, 6 months from now, a year from now, that due to something that a contractor did wrong, we're going to help her if it's still an issue?
I can tell you that I met on site with these folks, and I feel their pain as a resident myself. But I told them specifically that I could not offer a blanket warranty because it would violate our policies, and I cannot obligate future funds for things that I don't know if they were or were not caused by the work that was completed out there. What I also said, though, was that if they encounter something that they think may have been caused by this work, that they need to contact us. And I told them specifically that I would not leave them hanging on their own. I would help them work with the contractor or work with the city to get it resolved, because it's just the right thing to do.
Thank you, and that was the exact information that she also relayed to me. So I think I'll assume that she was unclear after that conversation, that there was no written follow-up maybe of what you said, which is okay, but I guess I feel good knowing that if 2 months from now she has blue putty coming in her sink and her refrigerator filter, that when she calls up to City Hall and has a plumber's certified report saying that there's concrete blue putty in my filter, that I'm hoping that we will take care of her, I assume. Are we not allowed to state that, I guess? But in goodwill, I imagine that's what we're going to do.
I think a good faith effort would be for us to look at it and see if we think it was caused by the workmanship of that project.
Perfect.
And if it was, we have an obligation to help out.
Thank you. I'm glad. I just wanted to bring that up tonight. Thank you so much. That's it, sir. Thank you very much.
That's the second item. Time saver oil change on Mountain Closed. If I remember correctly, they were the place where we took used oil when I was in the fishing business. Prior to that, we had a used oil receptacle down at the fishing fleet property. Do we have any place where people who change the oil on boats, and we after all have hundreds and hundreds of them in town, can take their used oil other than trying to serendipity dump it somewhere? So what's our status on that now?
I can tell you from my own experience, there was a place on Airport Road that was still accepting used oil when I was handling used oil. I don't know that they still are or not. Michael can answer probably where our staff is depositing the gallons of used oil that we use ourselves with our equipment.
Okay, well, it was Time Saver, at least the last time I was on council, and they were under contract with us. And wherever it is people should take it now, they need to be notified so that they know they can take it. Otherwise, they dispose of it in many ways that are not lawful nor good for the environment. So I would ask you all to come up with a game plan on what we can do to provide a safe and environmentally lawful place for people who are changing oils, specifically in boats, because cars, they dispose of it, that they can take their oil to, and then we make it known to them through public Facebook advertising.
Do the auto parts stores not take it anymore?
No, not when you're changing 40 or 50 gallons out of a diesel engine, or however much it is. So if you all would come up with what it is we're going to do on that, because I think we've just, since Time Saver sold a few months ago, that's just disappeared. And the other question I have is I want to congratulate staff on the four-way stops on Cybert, that you have the signs up telling people when they're gonna be put in. And I would like to know, do we have a time frame on the speed bumps in front of the under Destin Park that's gonna have its grand opening in May, not too long from now? And that's Public Works, I guess, can answer that.
Okay, I'll give you an update on that. We have received a quote from our continuing services contractor. We have a PO. We've given it to them. We're going to be starting the milling and resurfacing of Beach Drive coming up pretty soon, and hopefully we'll be able to tie those two together.
And I'm sorry, the time frame on that is?
Next couple weeks.
Okay.
And then in addition, just to kind of add to what you said, just for the record, the four-way stop on Cybert Forest, we have that advertised to start this Friday, May the 7th. We'll have guys out there really early in the morning putting down the stop bars and everything, and the signs. And we did get 2 flashing 30-inch stop signs like council requested. Those are in. The other thing was one of the signs that were so graciously loaned by the Sheriff's Department is missing tonight because it's over at the Billy Bowlegs. So it'll be back in the morning.
Well, again, I want to thank you all. That was very prompt and very nice. So, and that's all I have. Let's see. We're going to that, right? That's at the end, but we still have land use and city attorneys. Anything you all want to say tonight?
Nope.
And I just want to make one comment and wish Ms. Kopp a happy birthday. That's what I call real dedication to come to a city council meeting on her birthday.
Thank you. Nowhere I would rather be.
Then Destin versus
Yes,
Orlando, right?
At one of these meetings. Okay, public comments, last section. Anybody that would like to speak, now's the time.
Just real quick on the oil, when Time Saver closed, I started taking my oil to O'Reilly's. They do have a oil dispenser, but I don't know how big it is, so.
And we did that for a while, but the volume got to be so much that those guys finally said, no, thank you. So
okay.
we need to make a plan in case that happens again.